as we speak, there's kind of a battle going on over whether Joe Rogan should be on Spotify and allowed to spread scientific misinformation. In particular, there's a guy named Robert Malone that's talking about that's making a case against, at least against the COVID vaccine and so on. So outside of the specifics of this person, in this battle of scientific ideas that are sometimes tied up with ideology in our modern world, what do you think is the role? Like, who gets to censor, decide what is misinformation or information? Should we let ideas fly in the scientific realm, so scientific ideas, or should we try to get it under control? Like, which way? Obviously, all approaches will go wrong in some ways. Which is more likely to go wrong? One where you try to get a hold of, like, all right, this is a viral thing and it doesn't fit with scientific consensus, so we should probably like try to like quiet it down a little bit, or do you let it all just fly and let the ideas battle? Do you think about this kind of stuff in the context of history?
Well, that used to be $1 million question. Of course, now it's a multi-billion-dollar question.
Not trillion, yeah.
We're talking about powerful internet platforms becoming essentially publishers. And publishers can't say whatever they want. There are limits. They can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But there's a kind of social responsibility that is there. And I know some of these, I don't know a lot about this topic, but I know some of the large platforms do have dedicated offices to trying to rein in misinformation, as you would expect any publisher to do. You can't just let anything fly in Time Magazine or the New York Times either. There are all kinds of codes of ethics and legal obligations. So I'm a fan of the efforts, or I think some of the large internet platforms should be congratulated at least for trying to make an effort to rein in misinformation. It's going to be difficult, and there mistakes are going to be made, but it can't be a let everything fly kind of situation.
But when I watch, unfortunately, the pressure these platforms feel to identify and to censor misinformation, that pressure is ideological in nature currently. So if you just objectively look, there's a certain political lean to people that are pressing on the censorship of the misinformation, which makes me very uncomfortable, because now there's an ideology to labeling something as misinformation, as opposed to kind of having a value-less evaluation of what is true and not. And you also have to acknowledge that it says something, that there's a very large number of people that, for example, follow Robert Malone or follow people. I mean, what does that say about society?
Yeah.
And that there's a deeper lesson in there that's not just about blocking misinformation. It's distrust in science and institutions, distrust in leaders. Like, it feels like you have to fix that. And then censorship of misinformation is not going to be fixing that. It's only going to throw gasoline on the fire. You got to put out the fire.
Well, that's certainly possible. Yeah, I mean, I think people are distrustful of certain institutions and not others, right? And I think a lot of distrust is good. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do know there have been a lot of conspiracies, and that, people work behind scenes to do powerful bad things, and that's what needs to be exposed. The other thing I worry about, which is relevant to your question, again, it's a billion or $1 trillion question, is I think in a world of kind of flattening, where all news or all information or all data is kind of equal in some way. And so you get the Twitterverse going, and Doesn't matter if it's peer reviewed or it doesn't matter if it's been supported by evidence. It's just, a kind of outburst. It's interesting to contrast it with, say, 100 years ago. I mean, what would a crazy person or a flat earther or anything, what venue would they have? I mean, maybe they could go to a church or someplace. I mean, so now we have these empowering engines. Then that's what's new historically, is that basically anyone can have a blog or a Twitter feed, and that is new. And so that is, you can think of it also as a kind of clutter. So it's a kind of a radical democracy in a way. One of the weaknesses of democracy is if everyone has an equal voice and if everyone has equal power.
So there's, of course, a flip side to that, where everyone has equal power. It forces the people who are quote unquote experts to be better at communication. I think people like scientists are just like upset that they have to do like better work at communicating now. They used to be lazy and you could just like say I have a PhD, therefore everyone listen to me. Now they have to actually convince people. Like you have to convince people that the earth is round. You can't just say the earth is round, that's it. You have to like show, you have to make like, I mean, not the earth is round part, but things like that. You have to actually be a great communicator, do great lectures, do documentaries and so on, and to battle those ideas. And then also to defend the sort of the people labeled as crazy. In Nazi Germany, if you were protesting against some of the uses of science, of medicine, to commit atrocities, you would also be labeled crazy.
Yeah.
And so those voices are important.
Yeah, there's so many good points there. On the scientists becoming good communicators, the history of scientists becoming bad communicators has a history. And the last original contribution to science, written entirely in the form of a poem, is Buffon's Loves of the Plants. And following that, in the 18th century, you get the uglification of science, the deliberate uglification of science, with the idea being that if you are clear and if you speak beautifully, if you write beautifully, you're hiding something. You're covering over the truth with flowers and decorations and scents and pleasant odors. And so you get this scientific paper format, introduction, discussion, methods, results, conclusions. And it's kind of policed in this inhumane, non-humanistic kind of rhetorical way. And that's a big problem. And so you get that combined with just the rise of the research lab and the ever narrower widget builders, the cogs in the machine. It's not surprising that people might not trust certain aspects of that. That combined with the dirty laundry history of a lot of science, that you did have, the requirement at Auschwitz that people be, that physicians supervise the killings, the horrors of, Tuskegee and all kinds of other things, or even something like the atom bomb, which is arguably more neutral, at least, but nonetheless horrific. And so it's not surprising that a lot of people don't trust science, and a lot of science shouldn't be trusted, right? There's science and then there's science. So there's a long history of dirty, bad science that you don't solve just by saying we should have trusted it.